what do people wrongly believe? About money, how money could solve a problem.
Yes, right. So the wealth management piece, which is really, if you don't put away money, preferably in a tax-free account, sometimes a lot, and make hard decisions in order to do that, you will have a terrible retirement. Sorry, Jim, it's fear-based. It's a fear.
Right.
You've got to invest or you're going to be broke. You're going to die on the street kind of thing. That's the worst case scenario, but yeah.
This episode of the Power of War podcast is brought to you by SaferNet. For a full VPN experience coupled with antivirus, web filters, internet controls, and an internet use tracking console, SaferNet provides complete protection for your organization. Check them out online at safernet.com. You've tuned into the Power of War podcast with Brad Hawkins, serial entrepreneur and author of 3 books, God, the Devil, and the Internet, The Unshakable Life, and Power of War. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, also a serial entrepreneur and author of 3 books, I Work for Him, I Retire for Him, and She Works for Him. You know, our goal with every Power of War podcast is to provide a lively, unfiltered, unedited, unfettered, and unscripted conversation with a business person. We'll explore their daily work and attempt to uncover powerful war moments that reveal how God is actually working in the middle of real life leadership and decision making. This podcast is sponsored by InfiniteProtection.com, protecting businesses through unified cybersecurity, vulnerability, scanning, and device protection. Find them online at InfiniteProtection.com. David Noble is a longtime investment advisor, ministry leader, husband, father, and lifelong learner who has spent decades walking in 2 worlds many people struggle to reconcile: business and ministry. David worked more than 33 years in financial services, serving in leadership and advisory roles with RBC Dominion Securities, Ocean Rock Capital, and Fisher Investments. Along the way, he earned several of Canada's highest financial designations that I can't even pronounce. At the same time, David spent over a decade in ministry as a pastor, executive director, marketplace minister, and ordained minister through Third Day Fellowship Canada, He grew up in a military family, moving 10 times in his first 18 years across Canada. Raised outside of Christianity, David eventually experienced a radical born-again encounter with Jesus that completely reshaped the direction of his life. Today, after decades of leadership, transitions, victories, losses, and reinvention, David is still pursuing new callings in discipleship, investing, ministry, writing, and leadership development with one clear message: I'm not done. David Noble, welcome to the Power of War podcast.
Thanks, Jim. That's quite an introduction. Hi, Brad. Good to be with you, gentlemen.
It is exciting to have you join us. And for those of you who have been following along, we've been enjoying interviewing some of the best people that I know, and that is a group of men that we do a regular Bible study with. And David is one of our newest members, and it's been a complete joy getting to know David and hearing his heart for the Lord. And that is absolutely the best thing in the world about any of us, really. But I am looking forward to this because it's an opportunity where Jim and I really get to know you. I mean, we've not had a real chance to be able to get together and hear your heart, hear your story, hear where you've come from. You live in a foreign world, Canada. So
51st state someday, who knows?
Some would say.
Who knows where that's going? I think it's kind of funny as people talk about it. But yes, you are out of Canada. I'm looking forward to it. I've not spent a lot of time in Canada, and next month I'm going to spend a week in Ottawa, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But I know that's not where you're from. But we are going to start out this with a little bit of a rapid fire round of questions, just to casually get to know you a little bit more. And we'll dig in a little deeper and get some more questions going. But let's just start at the surface, just a little fun experience. We're going to try something a little bit different this time. But David, if you could just throw out your quick and non-thought through answers. Question, David, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Now, I had to ask that just because I'm curious about Canada. So, mountain or beaches? There you
Start
go.
shaking if I don't have it. No, no.
Cheers. Coffee or mountain or beaches?
Oh, well, mountain because they're local. Beaches I love.
Guitar or golf?
Guitar.
Markets or ministry?
That's a killer question. I can't answer
Choose
that.
one. You got to choose one.
I'm still trying to answer. Can I say business tree?
Yes, you can.
Is that count?
How about books or podcasts?
Podcast recently.
Risk or security?
Security.
Early mornings or late night?
Yes.
Yes, both.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna go well for you long term.
Well, when we get older, we need less sleep. So I guess that'll be something.
Yeah. I had 5 hours last night, so that gives you an idea.
One word your wife Michelle would describe you as.
Loving.
Nice, I like it. One thing people would assume about pastors that usually are wrong.
Underestimated.
Very good. What about one word that people assume about financial advisors that are usually wrong?
Fiduciary.
Okay. If you could sit down with a biblical figure other than Jesus for 1 hour, who would that be?
Moses.
Moses. Very nice.
And why? Tell me why. I just want to know why. Sorry, Brad.
That guy had the impossible challenge. And so he overcame all odds. And I want to hear his story. I'll tell you what, man. I mean, taking 2 million people across an ocean that wasn't there a minute ago, or the path through, and 40 years in the wilderness. Never got to go into the promised land yet. You never really saw him scowl. Well, he had a couple of issues, beating on a rock and stuff. But I'll tell you what, Moses, yeah, he would be the first one for sure. But I've got a list of people I got to talk to when I get there. We got to start with Jesus. I got some questions for him.
Nice. Very nice.
Calling all entrepreneurs and parents, protecting those we love on the internet is important. Safeguard your ventures and loved ones with SaferNet VPN. Our cybersecurity app keeps you safe on any device. Shield your business from cyber threats while ensuring a family-friendly online environment. Simplify your digital life with SaferNet VPN today. Get secured now. Sign up at safernet.com. That's safernet.com.
All right. So, just in our brief, quick little introductory conversation or introductory email exchange, we learned that you moved 10 times as a child. I guess that was before 18. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. How would you say that affected you or changed you or helped you become who you are?
Well, it was a conjunction of things. That was definitely one of them. My dad was in the military. He was definitely a military person, so no emotions, very little expression of love. Came from a railway engineer family himself, so he didn't have a lot of learning on that background. And then basically moving every 2 years is what they did back in that day, in that time in the military. He was absent a lot because he had to travel a lot, and he was at, meetings and that a lot. And I was an only child, and my mom wasn't supposed to actually have any children. She was told by medical doctors, you'll never have a child. So she prayed. She wasn't a Christian, but she said, God, if you give me a child, I'll raise him up for you, kind of thing, which is amazing, and she wasn't an atheist, but definitely wasn't a Christian. So she was walking in the supermarket one day through the milk section, and she felt a little sick. She didn't think too much of it, thought maybe it was the flu. It happened a couple more times over the next few weeks. She went to the doctor and she said, you're pregnant. She said, I can't be. I was told I can't. Well, it's impossible for me to be pregnant. Well, get ready, because the rabbit died. So I came along, and so I don't know if I was planned in that respect by that time that they had me. So a lot of things came together, that what I would describe as what it says, about Joseph, what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. So there was a lot of things working against me when you're an only child, becoming selfish and not having a lot of love and things like that. That can mess you up. You don't have any brothers or sisters. But God got a hold of me. I'm getting off track a little bit here, but yeah, that basically that was my first 18 years was and all of those. There's a good ending to all of those stories, which we could talk about if you want, but that's how it started out. So it was a little brutal at the beginning. I wasn't getting beaten every day or anything like that, but it would kind of be almost the opposite of that.
You were brought up in a non-Christian world.
That's right.
What was your understanding of faith or Jesus or just the whole Christian thing from a distance? How did that connect in your world?
When I was 7 years old, that's when I realized that there really was a God. And somehow I ended up going to church. And I think it was because it wasn't my parents didn't go to church, but they'd either drop me off or I'd walk to the local church and I'd go to a church. That was kind of bizarre when you think about it. So I actually went by myself to church.
Wow.
So that is interesting, isn't it? But I didn't have a born again experience. When I was 14, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should come to church with me." Okay. And I was also at that time doing drugs and alcohol and girls, and not so much girls at that age, but at 14, but all the other stuff. And I said, "Yeah, okay." So went, and it was a Southern Baptist, come to Jesus or perish in the hellfire forever kind of message. And I ran to the front. I mean, and it wasn't so much the message. I felt in my spirit so convicted that this was true and that I absolutely had to get up. That's what I did. And so I went up, surrendered my life to Christ, and then you turned back into hell for another 14 years. Always believed in God, believed in Jesus, just didn't really surrender to him. Went through the prayer, but didn't surrender, which maybe is why I'm so passionate about we need to make disciples, not converts. But at 28, the Lord really got a hold of me. I realized this is true. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. I've got to, and I had a good friend of mine had just come to the Lord about 2 or 3 weeks earlier. They'd been proselytizing me, so I finally surrendered. And that was what happened when I was 28 years of age. Never turned back. God has been faithful in my life ever since, and I've walked with the Lord in business ministry. Not 100%, we all slip and slide, but really, he's always been the center of my life since I was 28.
I love that distinction, because there's so many people that, say the prayer, and they think, okay, well, that's all there is. And then you start reading the word, and it doesn't align with what it is that our experiences are. It's like, how is it that we live in this state of peace, in this state of joy that he tells us that we can live in, but yet people are choosing not to follow him as Lord. They only want him as a savior. And that's a fascinating understanding of the difference of discipleship. And so I love that. I think it's fantastic.
As a good friend of mine said a couple weeks ago, that's not the offer. It's not the offer.
Right?
It's not the offer.
Right?
The offer
That,
isn't just for salvation. It's for lordship. It
yeah,
is.
it's and you have to realize, I mean, he loves us so much. I mean, he cares for us. He wants us to have the very, very best for our life. Why not surrender to someone who can lead us through the very best? Anyway,
Yeah.
you hit a highlight on my part too. So thanks for sharing that.
I just thought of a market analogy because I'm always in the markets. Why settle for an ounce of silver when you can have an ounce of gold?
Yeah,
I like it.
I'd like to have bought about 10 ounces of gold about a year ago. Be really good shape today, but
Speaking of markets, yes, you've spent 33 years in the financial services industry. I don't know if you know this, but I I owned an investment company for 20 years and it became a pretty large company. I mean, it was a lot of fun. So I understand the markets. I understand the world that you're in a lot. As a matter of fact, it's a fun thing, and I also do a fair amount of ministry as well. So we have very similar sinking points for sure. But so you've been at a very high level in the financial industries. How did you get started in that?
I went to college to take music.
Oh,
That's how
perfect sync.
well, that
Yes.
makes
I got
sense.
started in, and then I was a guitarist. Well, guitarists are a dime a dozen in the music world. Everybody plays guitar. So I realized, man, I'm not going to make any money at this. My mom showed me at that time, I would have been 20, I think. My mom showed me a ad in the paper for Principal Financial Group, which actually ended up biting the dust and taking a whole bunch of clients down with it. But I saw that, and so I actually didn't include that in my resume, but I actually ended up there. They hired me to be a salesperson for them for their financial funds at the age of I think it was 21 by the time I did that. And it was the weirdest thing. I didn't have a nickel to rub together, two nickels to rub together, and here I am, people with in that day would have been like quarter million or half million, which today would be like $1 million. And I'm actually I have 21 years, I'm wet behind the ears, and I am giving them financial advice. And it's just ridiculous. But unfortunately, there's a lot of if people only knew what it was like out there in the financial realm, there's a big spectrum between what is truly a fiduciary, which is working in the best interest of the client, and at the other far end, which is just really salespeople. But anyway, that's how I started out.
That's so
It was
true.
totally by accident. I realized, man, I'm going to be broke if I'm a musician. I mean, I played okay, but everybody plays guitar, like I said, and so many people play better than I did. So I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. And frankly, I remember when I was 6 years old, I used to listen to the radio. And back then, which is a few years ago, back then they used to have the hog report and the market report.
Oh
I would
yeah,
listen to
pork
that
belly's going on. I don't know what's going to get about pork belly.
yeah,
Yo,
pork
pork
belly's
belly
on
steak,
up
bet.
14 cents and Dow Jones Industrial Average. I would listen to that every day and I loved it. And I look at the papers. If any of your listeners don't know what that is, they used to have a thing called newspapers, and they used to actually have all the prices of things that they're how much they changed from the day before. I was just always interested. And I tell you one more little story. I got an allowance. My parents give me an allowance every week. I got my mom to help me roll all those up. I put them in a Seagram's bag. My dad drinks Seagrams. I put them in a Seagrams bag. And on my own cognizance, by myself, walked to the Royal Bank of Canada, which I'd been there with my mom before at 6 years of age. I might have been seven. I might have even been eight. It was six, seven, or eight, somewhere in there. Walked to the Royal Bank of Canada, went up to the teller, plunked this on the counter in front of her and said, I'd like to open up an account. No kidding. On my own cognizance. And I didn't even know what to do. So she went and got the manager, and I said the same thing to the manager. I'd like to open up an account. I said, but I want to inspect the vault first to make sure it's secure. This is at 6, 7, 8 years of age. And he actually took me down, showed me the vault down in the basement. And, oh, this is safe and you need 2 keys and all this kind of thing. I said, that'll be satisfactory. So they said, but you're going to have to go back and get your mom because you need to be 18 or whatever it was, but maybe it was 21 back then to open up an account. So that you see, there's something going on in my life. Very early, the Lord was planting seeds and had created me to actually do that.
You saw it,
Way
understood
before I
that there
even
was something there more than what you were seeing. I love that. That's exciting.
so cool. Yeah, yeah, that's yeah. So that was kind of the beginning, the beginnings, and then one thing led to another, and I was actually going to go to Northern Alberta Institute of Technology and take business administration. I think I was 24, 25. I was like, I got to get my life in gear here. Because principal, I only lasted about 6 months there. I felt there were real issues there. So I could feel it. I couldn't articulate it, but I felt I said, I can't stay here. So I left, and then I just did piecemeal stuff. And I said, I've got to go back to school and do some stuff. So business administration was where I was going. And I ran into my cousin, and he's an older cousin at that. He's a
So,
second.
so hold on here. So we jumped from you eight opening an account to going to school. So what you started going to school for financial services? What was your schooling?
No, no. At that I had grade 12 at that point, and I just well I had no I'm sorry I'd gone to college for music, but I realized as I said, no, this isn't it. So what I did then was I need to go to this Nate and get business administration. So it still wasn't purely financial that I was heading for. I wasn't going to university to get a commerce degree or MBA or anything like that. I mean, I was going business administration. So, but I ran into a cousin at a family reunion in Rocky Mountain House here in Alberta. And he said, so what are you doing with your life now? And he was a wonderful guy. His name was Ron Will. He's passed now, but he was just, I owe a lot to him because he said, well, why don't you look up Richardson Greenshills? And which is what it was called at the time before it got swallowed up by RBC, Dominion Securities. And he said, yeah, why don't you look there and I'll talk to a couple people and see if we can see what it would be like. Because you could be a broker, you could be a stockbroker. How would that sound to you? I was like, oh yeah, I played stockbroker. That sounds good. Yeah, it rang in my spirit, even though I wasn't following the Lord at that time. But it really did meant something to me, and I did that, and that was the beginning of how I got into the financial services industry. So at that point in time, I had taken music, and I had grade 12, and they hired me at RBC. All right, sorry, Richardson Greenshills.
So
And that was the beginning of my financial services, and that was as a stockbroker because that's what they were called back then.
sure.
They weren't wealth managers.
All right.
They
So
were
now, David, you've spent 33 years in the financial services business, now at a very high level. What has working in the markets taught you about human nature?
many things.
Choose just one for today.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, we're very greedy, but I think the most important thing is not that. The most important thing is that we are generally ill-equipped individually to work in today's markets. We're not educated in it. We don't have the composure for it. We don't have the discipline, which is very important. We don't have the ability to control our emotions, fear and greed, which are very powerful emotions. And basically, the market is driven by narratives, and Brad could attest to that. That people generally make decisions based on the most recent narrative that has convinced them it's true. And what a narrative really is a prophecy. And these people most of the people in the financial world don't know the Lord and aren't listening to what the Lord's saying. They're just putting a bunch of analytics together, and they're coming up with a narrative, i.e., a prophecy of what's going to happen. So based on that, you should do this, this, and this. Now, that doesn't mean those are of no value, but generally speaking, narratives are not the way to invest, in my opinion.
No,
Because
no, because
That's
narratives caused our gas price to double in price. Even though the gas they had in the tank or the oil they had in the tanks was cheap oil, they still doubled the price overnight just because they could. All right. So, what do people wrongly believe that money will solve? What do people wrongly believe? What problem do people believe wrongly that money's going to solve?
Well, when I started in the financial services industry, would have been 1983, really, with Richardson Greenshields. At that time, it was almost get rich quick in the finance. There was no wealth planning. There was no wealth management. There was no financial planning. There was no such thing. It was what's the hot stock? So it's like, Consolidated Moose Pasture Mines, man, it's going to at least $5. Like it's only $1 now. That was what it was about. But over the last 40 years, it's wealth management came in when, especially happened when the banks, the insurance companies, the brokerages, and the underwriting, when they all took the walls down between them, that all came together. And that's really when wealth management was born. And although, we didn't have ETFs, we had mutual funds. So I think that the question again was
What do people wrongly believe
wrongly believed.
about
Yeah.
money, how money could solve a problem?
Yes, right. So the wealth management piece, which is really if you don't put away money, preferably in a tax-free account, sometimes a lot, and make hard decisions in order to do that, you will have a terrible retirement. In fact, you're going to run out of money and you will like be on the street. That's what's going to happen if you don't set it aside. Because over this last 40 years, pensions of defined benefit pension plans, which are, you put money in and then the company pays
They've
it out.
disappeared.
They've basically gone the way of the dodo bird. There's a few people like C class, and if you work for the government, you still can get a pension.
The dodo bird just called, and he was offended by that comment. So,
Sorry.
okay, but you've also worked with a lot of successful people, right, Brad? What were you gonna say, David?
yeah.
Sorry, Jim. It's fear-based. It's a fear.
Right.
You've got to invest or you're going to be broke. You're going to die on the street, kind of thing. That's the worst case scenario. But yeah, it's fear.
So I'm curious because you worked for 30 years in the financial industry, but you also got involved in ministry. You were a pastor, if I understand. So you were a pastor with a church. How did you get into pastoral work?
Well, after I got saved, right away started a home group and discipling and that. So I was pastoring before I had the professional ministry attached to it. And it wasn't until 1998, the Lord spoke to me very, very clearly, and my wife, and said, "Okay, it's time to get out of the financial services industry." This is like 25 years ago or more, and follow me. And following him at that point in time was going to Charlotte, North Carolina, selling everything that we had, and going to Charlotte, North Carolina. My dad, my mom thought I was crazy. So did most of the people that we talked to and shared with. But I knew it was the Lord when I asked my wife if she'd be up for doing that when we had two little kids. And she said, yes. I knew right away, this has to be the Lord, because no wife, a mother of two little babies
So
in her right mind would ever say yes to, we're going to sell everything, including this beautiful house we have, give everything away or sell it. We're going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to go to Morning Star School of Ministry. I mean, nobody, that has to be the Lord. And
so you went to Charlotte to get another degree, is that right?
well, that was the direction I was headed in. I was only there for a year, and I did something that I swore I would never do, and that was become a pastor, because I'd seen pastors the way they were treated. by their sheep and their boards and what have you. And so I really didn't like the concept of the thought of being a pastor. But we were down there for a year, and we got a phone call. We wanted to see if you'd be interested in coming back to Red Deer and pastoring a church. And I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to pray about it. I really didn't know. And the next morning, I was working out because I think working out is another. I didn't put it down, but it's one of the other key things in my life. I think it's important to stay healthy and fit. I was working out and I got so excited, guys. I mean, I was just all of a sudden, wow, I'm going to be a pastor. This is so exciting. And that had to be the Lord because, again, I was convinced by a treadmill that all of a sudden, yeah, let's do this. We also had a very powerful prophetic word. I won't get into the details of that, but a very powerful and some very supernatural signs because I needed a real big push to get me to do that. And so God knows what we need in order to get us to do things. And in my case, I needed some supernatural, very amazing signs and wonders, which we got. So we made our way back and pastored a church back here in Red Deer, and everything that we'd sold and that was gone. And then we just basically went back to where we'd started from. So that might have been a mistake, but who knows?
Well, how could it have
Well,
been? How could it have been a mistake if you really felt like the Lord directed you there? Why do you think the Lord directed you back to Red Deer?
Well, not coming back. That wasn't the mistake. The mistake might have been selling everything. For example, if we had rented the house for a year, or if we had held it, and because the price of houses, we couldn't get back into a house then. We had to rent then, and because I didn't have a job, and pastoring is, as you know, small church pastoring, you don't have to worry about taxes. So as a result of that, we kind of that might have been. I don't know if it was a mistake. You don't know for sure. If things did when Joseph went to Egypt, was that a mistake? No, didn't
well,
turn out.
I'm a firm believer in the fact that God's always now forward. So
He's
whether
what?
it was a mistake or not, he's always now forward. So
Yes. Yes.
he's not going to go back and say, "Oh, that was a mistake." He's just going to say, "Okay, let's go."
Yeah.
So,
You,
yeah,
you're
but
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I just wonder about that sometimes. If we had just kept the house, we could have. But but that's a dumb thing to do.
so
Second.
so how long did you pastor?
Uh, we had a lot of powerful prophetic words and some amazing signs, like miraculous signs about how successful this was going to be when we went back in terms of revival and all kinds of cool, the call that's on our lives and everything. And it was making sense because gave up everything, went down to Morningstar, came back. We're pastoring a church and we pastored for 2 years, and God, Ken, clearly through my wife and I agreed, directed us that we needed to close the church, which I've actually never heard of in my life, anyone ever closing a church, and it definitely didn't line up with all these glorious things that are going to happen. So we took it to the people above us, the overseers, and they agreed. Well, that was interesting. And then we took it to our pastor advisory council at the local level, and they agreed. And then we took it and this is the biggest miracle of it all. We took it to the existing, all the members of the church, and told them what we felt, and they agreed with only one abstention. I've never heard of that ever, even for the color of a rug that you want to install in a church that
That's
everybody
for
is
sure.
on. You know,
So,
so we knew it was the Lord. So we closed the church. So I was like, yes, wow, I'm so successful. We sold everything, came back, can't get back into real estate, started a church. 2 years later, closed the church. Woo! Boy, am I ever a success. But we knew it was the Lord. So that then I was kind of a minister without portfolio.
well, and that's where Brad's going to go next. Administer without portfolio.
Well,
That was a
the
dark time.
question
Oh, yeah.
the question that I would have is how did that so you feel like you knew what God was telling you
And everybody,
and you sold everything, you went and got a year of school in, you came back, spent 2 years pastoring, and the outcome was shutting the church when you believed that the outcome was going to be revival. It was going to be a complete change in the community that you were at. Where did that leave your heart with the Lord? Did it look like He abandoned you? Did it look like you failed? Did it look like that you made mistakes starting from the beginning? Where was the walk? Where was your walk with the Lord in that?
Yeah. Let me just preface that with the comment that one thing that we did do, we worked with all the people. We had a Wednesday night while had the church was still open. We said, folks, we're going to take 3 months. We're going to meet on Wednesdays. You need to find a new church. We're going to walk with you for this next 3 months. But at the end of 3 months, we're shutting her down. We had the most powerful meeting the week before. We had said we're only taking 3 months. So figure that one out. It was a very powerful. God really showed up, but I felt that we needed to stick to it because God had directed us to do it. It was like I say, Brad, it was a dark night of the soul because I at that time, and I still am, success oriented. I don't want to be in an eddy somewhere on a river. I want to be in the middle of the river, fighting off pirates. And well, that's my heart. So it was the opposite. I had no direction at that point. God was quite quiet. And it was a bit of an interlude where we went out to do some ministry in Vancouver, although we didn't get called to the ministry there. It was only after we went to Vancouver that we found the Vancouver House of Prayer, where we did some very extraordinary harp and bowl. That's kind of where you're playing music and prayer, and you have people there doing the same thing. Very unusual kind of thing. No money. God was providing for us all the time through all of that financially, through trading. I was very successful. That was in 2000. From 2000 to 03, the market went through quite a bear market, and that was the first time I'd ever made $100,000 in the market. So that paid for us. We got a tax return we didn't expect back from a tax wizard guy. So God provided for us. But it was a bit of a kind of Joseph experience, take some of your other guys like Moses. I mean, he had a vision, and where does he end up? He ends up for 40 years on the backside of the wilderness farming. It's like, wow, that didn't help my brothers and sisters get out of Egypt. And he had a heart, but it was misdirected, but God had to deal with him. So I would read stories like that about, even Jesus. It didn't look very good at the cross. They're all hanging out there. Okay, we're out of here. That's the done job, and they didn't know. They didn't understand he's going to be resurrected 3 days from now. So I'd read those stories and I'd think about that. And the Lord was very, very, I never became long-term bitter towards the Lord. I always guarded my heart in that direction.
So how did
that doesn't mean I didn't have a momentary,
Sure. How did the Lord transition you then back into financial services? Because you never really left a ministry. Your ministry just turned into a marketplace focused. Talk about that.
Very interestingly, when we were out there, we were out there for 2 years. And we were having a good time out there. I mean, we were doing this ministry. I was doing some trading. We were involved in a home group there too, and it was good. Vancouver's a lovely place to be. And one morning, we're doing our devotions together, Michelle and I, my wife. And I'm opening up the Bible, and I read in Deuteronomy where it talks about, honor your father and your mother, that you might live long and dwell in the land that the Lord God has given you for an inheritance. And I read it out loud. We were reading out loud at that time or something, and I read it out loud. And Michelle, my wife, who had been saying for months, I feel like we're going to move. I said, come out in Jesus' name. There's no way I wanted to move again. I just moved from down to Charlotte, back to Red Deer, out to Vancouver. I'm exhausted. I said, we're not, and we don't have a lot of money. I said, we're not moving again. She said, read it again. I said, what? So I read it again, and it was like God highlighted it in yellow, and it jumped off the page, and I realized my mom and dad are in Edmonton. We need to go back and honor them and help them. Little did we know, my mom was beginning to develop Alzheimer's. We didn't know. And my dad was definitely not a care person. So they needed us. But that was the reason why we came back to Edmonton. And that brought me back into financial services because I needed to get a job. Borrowed $5,000 from my mom to get back because that's how we were at the end basically of our finances. So God knew what he was doing. He had provided for us for up until that moment. And then he called us through a powerful word to uproot again. And I wasn't happy about it. But as soon as I read, I realized, wow, how could I not have thought of that? Of course, we have to go back and honor my mom and my dad. So we moved back, and one thing led to another. I went back to RBC, Dominion Securities, and said, I'd like to come back. There's a very nice regional manager there. His name was Don Milligan, and he said, okay, well, we'll give you another chance.
How long had it been? What was the time frame?
Well, it was 1998 that I left in the spring of 98, and it was 2004 when I returned. So that would be 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very nice. Well, it's obvious that your wife has a lot to is one of those women that you want to pay attention to. She's obviously walking with the Lord. She's paying attention to what God has to say. She's probably been extremely influential in decision making. You've commented about her several times that, how unlikely is it that a wife would agree that, hey, let's shut everything down and let's move. And that is a tremendous blessing. So where did that depth come in your relationship?
Well, it starts with Jesus, having that all-in relationship with Christ. She had it, and I had it. And when we came together, we just burned like 3 logs in the fire, we always believed we need to seek the Lord, whatever we do, and whatever he says, we need to do it. Doesn't matter how crazy it sounds, or doesn't matter, or what other people think even, getting consensus and majority, that's not actually a biblical concept. When they would go to make decisions, it was unanimous, or they didn't stop praying until it was. They had to be in one accord.
Right.
So for us, it was like, we need to hear the Lord and we need to be in one accord. And we both had the faith. I mean, imagine that's a faith gift she has, to be able to do that with the 2 kids and all this stuff like that. That's a huge, and I just thank the Lord every day for my wife. And, she's my greatest resource outside of the Lord. That doesn't mean that it's always been easy or always been, a bowl of cherries.
She called us ahead of time and let us know. She told us it's okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You're talking to her before me. No, but 34 years.
It's 34
awesome. years, and we just are so thankful. And yes, that's been a highlight for me. And you read about some of the patriarchs in the Bible. Their wives weren't so helpful.
Well, I love how you've described the journey of seeking the Lord and finding what God wants you to be doing. And really, I look at it in a way that God says, you know what? He's going to speak to both of you. He's going to speak to you, and he's going to speak to your wife. And where there is unity, and God says this, where there's unity, God commands the blessing. And that is, to me, a monstrous thing, because if God commands something, there's no way of taking it back. And so when you look at the fact that you have a wife that you is seeking the Lord just like you, what a blessing! What an incredible blessing. I find it interesting because I also have a wife that seeks the Lord with me, but there's not always that we are in unity. We end up crashing, and it's like, well, I feel like God says this. She says, well, I think you're wrong. I think God says this, and we're at odds with each other. And one of the things that we've done over the past is we like, okay, obviously one of us wrong. If we compromise, we're both going to be wrong because all we want to do is do what God tells us to do. So we go back and we call it neutral. We go back to neutral and say, okay, let's just pretend like we haven't heard anything. God's smart enough to tell us again. Let's go back and hear what God has to say, and we come back and we might have to do that 2 or 3 times until we find what God says. But that's the beauty of what I hear you saying is you and your wife have an agenda, and that agenda is do what God tells you to do. And that is the most beautiful thing that I think any marriage could do. And that is tremendous. I can tell I really like your wife, and what a blessing that she is to be able to participate in helping you follow the Lord in all the ways that you do. So that's amazing. Now, you also have 2 kids, right?
Yes.
And what are they on their own now? Are you still raising them, or where are we at there?
No, they're on their own. Benjamin, my youngest, is out working and going to school. He was a personal fitness trainer, so he really helped me get back on the wagon after I'd fallen off of it and not working out every day back about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm so thankful for that. But he decided, this. I need to do more. This is very difficult industry to the personal fitness training because you get somebody at the end of Christmas ready to go. Oh yeah, they sign up for a year and they show up for a month and then that's it. They're done. And that it's very difficult to keep people on track in that industry to make that commitment long term. So he said, I love the whole area of body motion and muscles and how it all works biologically and stuff like that. So he's going out to be a doctor now. So he's back in school. He's just finished his second year. He's going to either go kinesiology, physiotherapy, or doctor of medicine, a doctor of movement.
Nice.
So
Very cool.
They're all very high bars. They have it's very difficult to get into those paths. But he's very committed to it. He's doing exceptionally well. My other son, and he's married. He's married to Emily. They don't have any children yet. Come on, guys, get it. Then Josh is my other son, and he's actually got some challenges. He's on AISH right now, which is a sort of a thing that helps out people that have disabilities. So he's walking through that. But most recently, I've been thinking about as I've I'm in transition right now too, which we haven't talked about. But I'm in transition after 33 years of doing that and 10 years of ministry. I've just been thinking about he's very brilliant, and when he gets his mind on something, he absolutely cannot be swayed. And I just thought that those are 2 very good things for business. So I've been thinking about, I wonder what business I could perhaps get him involved in. So you guys could be praying about that because he is way underperforming his capability and capacity. I mean, capacity, I don't know, but his capability, as hidden as it might be, is phenomenal. So seeking the Lord on that.
That is awesome. The Power of War. You sent me a text a little earlier and say, "What is the Power of War?" The Power of War is a book I wrote that God shared with me, and I actually wrote it over a weekend. It was really an amazing journey that God just spoke and poured that out. But it's basically just saying, okay, we have a tendency to come to conclusions when things happen to us, and you could have very easily said, okay, well, God told me to go to sell everything and then go to school. And then all of a sudden, he pulled you right back to where you were, and you could have kept your house. And that could have taken you into a dark spot, saying, what in the world? But yet you stayed curious to what God's doing and continued that process. Then you go to the place of okay, well, I end up selling everything, coming back here and shutting down this church. But you remain curious. You said, okay, what is God doing next? And it just continues the process. And so what I find is that the enemy likes to use all of those circumstances to stop us spiritually, to destroy us spiritually, to keep us in a hole, saying, well, I don't know how to hear God's voice. I don't understand what God's doing. But yet, if we remain curious and keep the power of or, I screwed up everything and came and shut down the church, or he has a much bigger purpose. He has a bigger direction. Where is that curiosity that is going to allow us to continue on that journey to continue seeing what's going on? Now, you just mentioned that you're in a change of careers again. You could look at that and say, okay, I'm done. But one of the great things that you say is, I'm not done. Say, or God has a whole new chapter for me. And so if we remain in that curious state while we're seeking the Holy Spirit, showing him what it is that we're doing, he will always guide us into that next place. But that's the story of your life. That's what you've been doing, is that everything that you've done, you could have looked at as being a bad thing. But you remained curious to see what it is that God chooses to do with your life in the next step. And every time he does it, he brings something new and beautiful out of it. And so it is going to be very exciting and interesting seeing what that next journey is for you and seeing what happens. So we're going to have to have another conversation at some point and seeing where God takes this next journey, because it's going to be exciting. I can guarantee you. I've got a couple of questions that I want to hit on a quick little wrapping round around the wrapping up our conversation. But a couple of things that I want to hear from you. Just give me the word that comes to your mind when I throw these things out to you. But what word describes your walk with God today?
Faith.
What lesson? Wait, no, I'm going to come back to that. One thing success never gave you.
You mean financial success?
Whatever you consider success.
One thing success never gave me. I can't think of.
Okay.
I'm so content with content in a way, but also excited to go further. I'm sorry, I can't give you one word for that.
I think maybe you did there.
Content.
So,
That's right.
Next,
a belief God had to correct in your life.
sorry, one more time.
A belief God had to correct in your life. A false belief.
That I'm the most important person in this situation. It's got to be one word, right? What do you call it when you're not selfish? What's the word for being unselfish? Giving, or I'm not sure what the word would be. Unselfishness?
I like unselfishness. A prayer that you return to often.
What is your will on this, Lord?
Nice. What faithfulness means to you today?
Walking wherever and whatever the Lord has me to do.
Fantastic. That is amazing.
All right. As we wrap up, I want to ask one final question. David, if you could, Mercy Me has a great song, Dear Younger Me. If you could speak to the younger version of yourself, what what's one thing you would say? What's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Invest more in relationships.
Wow.
Absolutely. And that includes the Lord.
Oh, I like that.
Relationship just is so, everything rises and falls on relationship, and that includes the Lord too.
Love that.
Absolutely. David Noble, thank you so much for being here today on the Power of War podcast. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure, Jim and Brad. It was a pleasure and an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Power of War podcast with Brad Hawkins and Jim Brangenberg. Please follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, and Truth Social. And if you'd like to join us on the show, love to have you reach out to me and just pop me an email, jim@iworkforhim.com, jim@iwork4him.com. We hope today's discussion encouraged you to live with the power of war on your mind and to submit your business issues, your leadership struggles, your life decisions to the one who's got all the answers. And remember, you can live trapped in between fear and comfort, or you can step forward into the calling God has placed on your life. Until next time. This episode of the Power of War podcast is brought to you by SaferNet. For a full VPN experience coupled with antivirus, web filters, internet controls, and an internet use tracking console, SaferNet provides complete protection for your organization. Check them out online at safernet.com.